It all started 3 weeks before the party. Sometimes, life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I was standing in the kitchen, stirring the sauce for dinner and keeping an eye on the garlic bread, when the phone rang. It was my sister, Sarah. I glanced at the clock. It was 6:30 on a Tuesday evening. The kids were at the table, hunched over their homework. David, my husband, was still stuck in back-to-back meetings at the office. Everything felt ordinary, until Sarah's voice came through the phone, bright with excitement. "Guess what?" she said, practically bursting with energy. "Emily's turning 8 next month, and we're doing a huge party at that new venue downtown. The fancy one with the indoor playground and catering. The one near the shopping district." "Oh, that sounds amazing," I replied, trying to keep up with stirring the sauce while checking the timer on the garlic bread. "The kids will love it. They've been asking when Emily's birthday is coming up." There was a brief silence on the other end. A hesitation. I could tell something was coming, but I wasn't prepared for what she said next. "Actually," she began, her tone shifting just slightly, "we're keeping it small this year. Just close family and Emily's school friends. You know how it is with the venue capacity and catering minimums." I stopped stirring the pasta sauce. Something about her tone made my stomach twist into a knot. "Okay," I said slowly, "but what does that mean exactly?" "Well, you and David are invited, of course. But we're not really doing the cousin thing this year. Emily wants to have a cool, more grown-up party. Having a bunch of little kids running around doesn't really fit the vibe we're going for." A wave of disbelief washed over me. "Wait. You're not inviting my kids to their cousin's birthday party?" I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's not like that. Emily's at an age where she wants to focus on her friends. It's not personal, it's just how things are." I gripped the wooden spoon so hard, my knuckles turned white. "You're telling me that my 6-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son, who adore their cousin, aren't invited to her birthday?" I asked, my voice rising without realizing it. "Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but Emily just wants it to be special. It's her day, and we need to let her have it her way." I could feel my heart racing. "Sarah, have you told them? Have you told my kids they're not invited?" She hesitated again. "Well, no. I thought you would handle that." "Of course not," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "I'm not doing this. If my kids aren't invited, then David and I won't be there either." "Oh, come on," she said, sighing in that way that made me feel small. "Don't be dramatic. Mom and Dad are going to be so disappointed if you don't show up. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to exclude 2 kids from a family event." My words felt harsh, but they were true. She sighed again. "Fine, do whatever you want, but don't blame me when Mom asks why you're being difficult." And with that, the call ended. I stood there in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear. My mind was racing, my thoughts spinning in a whirl of disbelief and hurt. I set the phone down and looked at David, who was just walking in from the other room. I told him everything, trying to keep my voice steady. His face hardened with each detail. "So, we're not going," he said firmly. "We're not going," I confirmed. The words tasted bitter. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. The next few days felt like a slow-motion train wreck. I could feel the tension building, and I had no idea just how much it was going to explode. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. "Sarah told me you're not coming to Emily's party," she said, her voice filled with confusion and concern. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath and explained everything to her. I could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on me as I spoke. My mother listened in silence for a moment before making one of those sympathetic noises that always made it feel like she was trying to soften the blow. You know, Sarah's just trying to do what's best for Emily, she said gently. It's her party, and she can invite who she wants. You can't force her to invite everyone. I'm not trying to force anyone, I said, frustration creeping into my voice. I'm choosing not to attend an event where my children are deliberately excluded. Don't make a big deal out of this, Mom said, almost impatiently. Just go to the party. The kids won't even notice. They'll notice, I snapped. When every other grandchild is there except them, they'll notice. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could tell she was trying to figure out what to say next. You're being stubborn, she finally said, sounding tired. Just go. Mom and Dad will be disappointed if you don't show up. Then maybe you should have thought about that before excluding 2 children from a family event, I said, my voice tight. I could hear the sharpness in my words, but I couldn't stop it. The line went dead after that. She hung up on me. That night, when the kids were tucked in bed, I told David about the conversation. He listened quietly, his jaw tightening with each word. When I finished, he simply nodded. So, we're still not going, he said, more of a statement than a question. No, we're not, I said, my voice firm. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been put in a situation like this? How did you handle it? Let me know, I'd love to hear your stories. The days that followed were filled with silence and tension. My sister sent out a family text with the party details, but I didn't respond. The group chat filled with questions, with my brother asking if there was drama, and I gave him the brief version. He said he understood, but he was still bringing his kids to the party. He didn't want to make waves. It wasn't the first time, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. The day of the party arrived. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the sun was shining brightly, the kind of perfect weather that made you want to be outside. But instead of getting ready to attend a birthday party, David and I decided to take the kids to the aquarium. We thought it would be a special outing, just the 4 of us, to make up for the disappointment. Before heading to the aquarium, we went to their favorite restaurant for lunch, their faces lighting up as soon as they saw their favorite dishes being placed in front of them. We didn't say a word about the party happening across town. Why tell them? Why hurt them any more than they already had been? We made it through the day, exploring the exhibits, watching the sea turtles glide effortlessly through the water. But I could see the questions starting to form in their eyes. Emily's party was supposed to be a big deal, and they didn't understand why they weren't there. As we stood in front of the jellyfish tank, my daughter tugged at my sleeve with a small, tentative hand. Mommy, is Emily's birthday party today? I froze. My heart sank into my stomach. I glanced at David, who was tense beside me, his hand resting on our son's shoulder. He could see the expression on my face, the way my heart broke for our children. How do you know about that, sweetie? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I could feel the tears threatening to come. Grandma mentioned it yesterday when she called, my daughter replied innocently. She asked if I was excited about the party and what I was going to wear. Of course she did. Of course, my mother had assumed we'd worked everything out. That we were fine. But we weren't fine. Not by a long shot. I knelt down to her level, trying to find the right words. Sweetheart, we're not going to that party. It's just for Emily and her school friends. Why not? But I'm her cousin, she said, her voice rising, hurt and confused. My heart shattered just a little bit more as I saw the tears welling in her eyes. I know, baby, I know. I took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to explain something that didn't make sense. Sometimes parties are just for certain people. This one is just for Emily's friends. But we're family, my son added, his face scrunching up in confusion, as though he couldn't fathom why he wouldn't be included. The pain in their voices was unbearable. I had no idea how to explain it to them. How could I tell my 6-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son that their aunt didn't think they were important enough to be invited to a family party? I took a deep breath, swallowing down the lump in my throat. I know, baby. And I'm so sorry. The tears started to fall, and my daughter's small hands gripped mine tightly. Doesn't Aunt Sarah like us? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, filled with so much hurt and confusion. My heart broke. Of course she likes you. It's just a party for her friends, okay? It doesn't mean she doesn't love you. But my son wasn't listening. He started crying too, his little face scrunched up in sadness, not understanding the situation but feeling the weight of it all. David bent down and picked him up, his own expression dark and unreadable. Let's go home, he said quietly, the finality in his voice making the air thick with tension. The drive home was silent except for the occasional sniffle from the back seat. I kept my eyes on the road, doing my best to keep the tears from falling. I didn't want my kids to see me upset. They were already confused and hurt, and I didn't want to add to that. But I could feel the weight of it all pressing on me, and I could feel the anger simmering inside, too. When we got home, I did my best to settle the kids with a movie and their favorite snacks. They seemed to forget about the party for the moment, but I knew it wouldn't last long. The pain was still there, just beneath the surface. David disappeared into his office, likely to deal with whatever work things he needed to handle. But an hour later, his phone rang, then mine. Then his again. I could tell something was off. David didn't answer the calls, but I could see the tension in his face, the way his jaw clenched. I walked into his office, and he was sitting at his desk, staring at his phone with an expression I knew too well, the kind of look he got when someone had made a very serious mistake. David, what's going on? I asked, my voice quiet, but heavy with the question I knew was coming. He held up his phone and showed me the screen. 15 missed calls, he said, his voice surprisingly calm. 3 from your sister. 4 from your mother. The rest from your brother and various family members. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just about a party anymore. This was turning into something much bigger. Has a family situation ever made you feel this way, caught between loyalty and doing what's best for your own kids? If you've been in a similar spot, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. I had no idea just how far the situation would spiral out of control. David didn't respond to the calls. He just stared at his phone, his fingers tapping lightly on the screen as the missed notifications continued to pile up. I could feel the tension building, like a storm ready to break. I could see in his eyes that something was coming. Finally, David set the phone down, looked at me, and said in a low, steady voice, I made a call. What kind of call? I asked, already dreading the answer. The kind that clarifies certain business relationships, he replied, his gaze unwavering. I froze, trying to make sense of his words. My mind was racing, connecting dots I didn't even know were there. What did you do? I whispered, but I already knew it wasn't going to be good. David turned his laptop toward me. The screen glowed with the header, Morrison Property Development, my brother-in-law's company. I stared at it, feeling a sudden coldness creep over me. I recognized the name instantly. Sarah had mentioned her husband, Mark, working on a major deal with Centennial Group, a big commercial project. It had been their dream project. The one that was supposed to change everything for them. The one that was supposed to bring in enough money for the house they'd been eyeing and the private school Emily had wanted. What does this have to do with anything? I asked, my voice shaky. David clicked through the email chain, showing me how my brother-in-law had been negotiating with his acquisitions team for months. The deal had been nearing completion. They were about to present the final contract next week for approval. It was a multi-million-dollar contract, something that could secure his company for years to come. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, confused. But in my gut, I already knew. David took a deep breath, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a mix of calm and cold determination. "I'm the majority shareholder of Centennial Group," he said, his voice matter of fact. "What?" I breathed out in shock, my mind reeling. How long have you been?" 3 years, he interrupted, looking at me steadily. "It's under a different corporate structure. Most people don't make the connection between David Chin and Centennial Group. I prefer it that way." I was still trying to process the fact that my husband controlled a multi-million-dollar company. But what he said next hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Your brother-in-law has been negotiating with my team for months," he said, his voice calm, but the edge in it made my blood run cold. "They were about to present the final contract to me next week for approval." "And?" I asked, breathless, fearing where this was going. David leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. "I called the team an hour ago. I told them to kill the deal." My heart skipped a beat. "You killed a multi-million-dollar deal? Over a birthday party?" David's gaze never wavered. "No. I killed it because your sister told our children they weren't important enough to be included." His voice was calm, but there was a steeliness in it I had never heard before. "There's a difference." I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of his words sinking in. My mind was spinning, trying to understand what this meant for our family, for my sister's family, for everything. Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed. A text message from Sarah flashed across the screen. "Why is David torpedoing Mark's deal? What the hell is going on?" My stomach churned. And then, almost immediately after, another text came through, this one from my mother. "Your husband is destroying your sister's family financially over a party invitation. Call me now." And another one from my brother. "Dude, this is insane. Call off your husband." David's phone buzzed too. He declined every call. His face remained impassive, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "They don't know it's you," I said slowly, my voice low. "They don't know you control Centennial." "They do now," David replied, his tone cold, final. "I told my team to inform Mark's company exactly why the deal was being terminated. I told them the chairman personally declined to move forward with a partner who demonstrates poor values regarding family." I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, the consequences of it all. "David," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "They made our children cry. They told them they weren't important. That they weren't worthy of being included. We can't just ruin their lives over this." David's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "This isn't about a birthday party. This is about making sure our children know they matter. That their feelings are valid. And that when someone treats them as less than, there are consequences." Before I could respond, my phone rang again. This time, it was Sarah. "What the hell is your husband doing?" she screamed into the phone, her voice shrill with anger. "Mark just got a call from Centennial Group saying the deal is dead because of family values concerns and that the decision came directly from the chairman. Do you know what this means for us?" "I know exactly what it means," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. "This is insane. Over a birthday party, you're going to destroy our financial stability because Emily didn't want a bunch of toddlers at her party. They're not toddlers. They're your niece and nephew," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "They're 6 and 4 years old, and they cried today because they couldn't understand why they weren't included. This is about so much more than a party, Sarah. This is about the way you treated our family. This is not proportional," she spat. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. And you're talking about 2 children who were deliberately excluded from a family event, I said, the words cutting through the tension. Tell me which one matters more. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up for your family like this, even when it meant losing something big? What did you do? I'm curious to hear your stories. It didn't stop there. Sarah was furious, my mother was furious, and everyone in the family seemed to be looking at us like we were the ones who had gone too far. But there was no going back now. The next 2 days were a whirlwind. The family group chat exploded. My parents were both upset, demanding that we fix things. My brother, always the peacemaker, tried to mediate, but it was clear there was no easy way to undo the damage. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they all weighed in with their opinions, criticizing David, criticizing me, but none of them understood. They weren't the ones who had seen the look on our kids' faces when they asked why they weren't invited. David, as usual, remained unfazed. He didn't respond to any of the messages. He was in back-to-back meetings, restructuring some portfolio companies. He worked, and when he wasn't working, he spent time with the kids. He kept things normal for them. But then, on Monday evening, Sarah showed up at our door. No Mark. No Emily. Just Sarah, looking like a ghost of her former self, exhausted and drained. The last time I'd seen her this way was when we were teenagers and she had messed up something big, something I couldn't even remember now. Can we talk? She asked, her voice small, vulnerable. I let her in. We sat in the living room. Sarah looked around, taking in the familiar surroundings, family photos on the wall, the kids' artwork on the fridge, the toy bin in the corner. It was all so normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. I didn't realize David was that successful, she said finally, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Does it matter? I asked, my voice sharp. I was tired. Tired of this whole situation. Tired of trying to explain something that didn't need an explanation. It matters that I underestimated the consequences, she replied, her eyes downcast. I blinked, surprised by her honesty. But the words still didn't feel like an apology. Not yet. She sighed deeply. I was wrong. Not because of the money, she said, pausing. I was wrong before that. Emily didn't say she didn't want the little kids at her party. I said it. I made that decision. Her voice faltered. Why? I asked softly. Because I was jealous, she admitted, her face crumpling with regret. Your kids are adorable. Everyone always comments on how well-behaved they are, how sweet they are. And Emily's been going through a difficult phase, tantrums, attitude problems. I felt like everyone was comparing them. And I just wanted one event where Emily could shine without the comparison. But I didn't think about what it would do to them. I didn't think about how they would feel. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, but I could see the rawness in her face. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. Not because of the money. But because I hurt 2 kids who didn't deserve it. I let her words sink in. For the first time in a long time, I saw my sister being honest. Not just about the party or the deal, but about the insecurity and hurt that had led her to make that decision. I didn't answer immediately. It was too much to process. But when I did speak, my voice was calm. You need to apologize to them, I said. Not to me. To them. I know. I will if you'll let me. She looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. That's up to them, I said. But I think they'll be okay. They're kids. They forgive easily. But you're going to have to work hard to rebuild that trust. Sarah nodded, her face pale but determined. She knew she had a long way to go. As for the business deal, that was another story. David didn't reinstate the deal. Later, he explained that it wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about principle. "I don't do business with people who don't value family," he said simply. "There are other contractors, other development companies. I'm not going to partner with someone who treats my family like that." And so, the deal was dead. There was no turning back. Sarah did apologize to the kids. She came over a few days later with Emily, and the two girls, my daughter and Emily, made homemade cards inviting my kids to a do-over party. Just cousins. No one else. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to my children. They forgave her instantly, the way kids do. Their love was pure, untainted by the adult drama that had unfolded. As for me and Sarah, our relationship is still healing. It's been 4 months now. We're cordial. We're friendly at family gatherings. But there's a distance between us that wasn't there before. A gap that I'm not sure will ever fully close. Mark's company, fortunately, survived. They found other projects, smaller ones, but they were okay. Not thriving the way they had hoped, but they were fine. And as for my parents, well, they eventually came around. Dad said he understood David's position, even if he wished it had been handled differently. Mom still thinks the whole thing was an overreaction, but she stopped saying so at family dinners. The tension between us eased, but the undercurrent was still there. The kids don't remember most of it. They had their do-over party with Emily, full of cake and presents and laughter. That's all they cared about. And honestly, that's all that mattered to them. But I remember. I remember the confusion on their faces, the tears in their eyes when they didn't understand why they were excluded. And I'll never forget the lesson David taught them that day. He stood up for them, chose their dignity over everything else. Over business. Over money. Some people think David overreacted. That destroying a business deal over a party invitation was extreme. But those people didn't see the tears in our kids' eyes. They didn't hear our son's sobs in the back seat. And they don't understand that sometimes, the most important thing you can teach your children is that they matter. That their feelings are valid. That when someone treats them as less than, there are consequences. David taught them that lesson. And honestly, it's the most valuable thing he's ever done for them. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to make a hard choice like this for your family? What would you have done? Share your thoughts and experiences below. If you've dealt with a situation where you had to stand your ground and protect your loved ones, you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your life and standing up for what truly matters. And that's the end of the story. I hope this resonates with you. Let me know your thoughts.